That just encourages more.
Your point is very well made, Colonel. I think that there are consequences to political designations and consequences in the actions of the people who order it and the people who are decision makers in other countries, which leads us to Prime Minister Maliki. And does this indicate, does this slaughter that we have seen of the people in Camp Ashraf indicate that the government now of Prime Minister Maliki is perhaps in a subservient position to the Iranian mullah regime?
If I may again, sir, I see him subservient to three different elements. One is the Iranian regime, two is Hakim, and three is Muqtada Sadr. And we saw this even in the execution of Saddam. Muqtada Sadr was the one who said to his followers, Saddam will not live to see the light of a new year. And then suddenly, Task Force 134 gets a call from Maliki himself saying, I want Saddam turned over tomorrow. And you remember the spectacle of that. Maliki is taking orders from three different elements. And as you recall, Alawi won the election, but Maliki would not follow the Constitution and work with Alawi. And as a result, Alawi won the election, but he lost the government.
Well, the mullah regime obviously, let me just put it, Dr. Taki, you've suggested that actually the MEK is not a major force in this part of the world, that in Iraq they're not considered to be an important player.
In Iraq?
Excuse me, in Iran.
Yes.
That they're not
right.
a major part of the resistance or opposition. Mm-hmm. Why would the mullah regime be so concerned about them if they weren't a player?
Oh, the paranoid politics of the Islamic Republic are beyond my comprehension. They're concerned about every expression of dissent. That's what totalitarian countries, governments are like. They try to squash any form of dissent. But in terms of array of forces that could displace the current regime, I don't think MEK will play a role in that.
Okay. I'm not sure what role MEK will play. I'm not sure what their position is in terms of the people of Iran and the Green Movement, etc., as well as the mullahs. But it does seem to me to be clear that Maliki, the Prime Minister of Iraq, thought that he was doing a favor for his buddies in Tehran in committing this massacre. Let's go to a little bit about the relocation and such. Are all of you suggesting then that relocation in the United States is what you think will probably be the end result of this?
I suggest in my testimony that should come under the auspices of the United Nations Refugee Commission.
But the United Nations is located in New York, I think. That's
well, it has offices all over the place, and
maybe we could house them in the UN offices in New York. And, yes,
Mr. Chairman, I think that the United States should be prepared to take all, or the majority of them. But I do think that many other countries, as we are seeing in Europe, who are unilaterally taking actions in Libya and other places that they think are on the best interest on the world stage. I believe there's tremendous momentum, critical mass building, and I believe if the United States would take a lead, or the UN, I believe we would find a host of countries be willing to take members of Ashraf.
Well, Colonel Martin certainly has made that point that we've got citizens from various countries there, and the witness that we had at our briefing prior to the hearing today was a young lady from Canada. And maybe, Doctor, you could let me know how many people there at Camp Ashraf would you suggest have such ties? What percentage of that 3,400 have ties to elsewhere?
While I was there, I did not consider whether they were citizens or whether they had green cards or visas, but I was impressed with the number of people who had been received graduate and postgraduate degrees in developed countries, in Europe, and in the United States and Canada. I mean, many hundreds of the residents were very well educated, spoke very good English.
Yes, sir.
I should point out that Mr. Struan Stevenson of the European Parliament introduced actually a European plan to first provide security at Ashraf via UNAMI, a United Nations entity, with the help of the U.S. military, and then at the same time with the EU and the U.S. To resettle residents in Europe and the U.S.
Let's just note that my observation, personal observation, is that the people involved in this movement are highly educated people and highly motivated and have a great sense of unity. And while the United States has been in Iraq, which I will close with a closing statement about the wisdom of us going into Iraq in the first place, considering what this incident is telling us about the Iraqi government. But as long as we were there, we could make promises, and we did make promises to the people of Camp Ashraf. But I think that we should be proud that as when we were there in Iraq, that we didn't send the wrong message to the mullahs that we were cowards and that we didn't believe that only pacifists can bring down the mullah regime. The mullahs, it won't be just pacifism, be people with courage and people who stand up, people who have their own motives, whether they have their own religious group or their own social group. There are groups of patriots during the American Revolution that brought down British control of America. And they all weren't just of one mind. Some of them, in fact, were religious fanatics. Some, they had Christian cults that lived in the United States who supported us, and that's our history. But they had their rights, and they were willing to fight for them. So let me just leave with one last thought. And I'm going to give you a chance to express the last thought, and then I'm going to express maybe one minute worth of thought. Mr. Carnahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I just want to personally say to the Chairman for his work on this issue, his leadership, and leading our delegation there, demanding answers to tough questions, both from the Maliki government, but also from our own government, in terms of how we go forward, bring people to justice, and find out how we can go forward to find a safe haven for the people there. So again, thank you, and thank you to the witnesses for bringing your expertise to bear here today.
All right, and I will finish with this. Number one, there will be a list of questions offered to the State Department concerning the massacre at Camp Ashraf, including when they knew about what and who gave orders for our military to leave, et cetera, and I've detailed some of those questions. So there will be official list of questions from this committee to the State Department, and we will expect an answer. If we do not get an answer, I will proceed with making sure that we have a follow-up hearing until those questions are answered. And finally, let me just leave with this thought. The invasion and the liberation, you might say, of Iraq was something that I supported. I mean, I trusted President Bush that he knew what he was doing, that he had a good grip on how to make sure that we got that job done, and that it was necessary, that it was absolutely necessary for us to go into that country with heavy armored divisions and in such a big way. I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong to put my trust in his judgment, and I had worked for the President of the United States, and I assumed that he had a similar responsible position toward the American people and sending the American military, as did the president who I worked for, which was Ronald Reagan. and that was not the case. The United States has paid a dear price, probably $1 trillion of wealth, which may have been one of the major factors in kicking us into this horrible economic crisis that we're on the edge of today, as well as thousands and thousands of our young people dead, and many tens of thousands more who lost parts of their body or their faces were blown off, or they now live in misery because their homes, their home lives are destroyed. And that's the price we Americans have paid. And Americans don't mind fighting for freedom. Americans don't. That's our job. We come from every race, every religion, and every ethnic group, so we can show the world there's a better way. But the ingratitude that I have found in our visit to Iraq was overwhelming. I think that the members of the MEK that I have met here in the United States exemplify a commitment to freedom, and no matter how activist or what their organization did in the past, they're committed to freedom and democracy today. And certainly the slaughter there at that camp, we should have taken more caution and more care to see that that did not happen. And I think we all believe that. Let's just make sure that no more of these people who are friends of freedom are murdered by the mullah regime in Tehran or by their stooges who now control the government of Iraq. Thank you very much. This hearing is adjourned.